Two announcements before I share this week's installment in our Dilemmas in Halacha. Number one, I think many of you know that Barbara and I will be leaving for vacation, actually a week from tomorrow. And Rabbi Kenneth Green will be taking over as being the host and the deliverer of the Torah, the Halacha, during the Havdalah program. So it will continue. As I see, we have a strong turnout tonight, and keep it going. Always nice to see everybody, both here in the village and our friends who are in other states right now. Secondly, I just want to mention, someone asked me in shul tonight also about what I was going to be doing myself for making Havdalah. And I told them that the halacha says is that if you have a katan, a minor, like a child who's old enough to know what's happening, but not old enough to be subjected to the halachas of the 9 days, so you let the child drink the wine, but if there's no child, you drink it yourself. So I made Havdalah on Abori Pri Hagafen, Rabbi Chaim made Havdalah on Abori Pri Hagafen. Some people might use beer tonight, or schnapps, or shahakol, but only for Motzei Shabbos, for the mitzvah Havdalah. The mitzvah Havdalah can take place as it normally does during the 9 days, but otherwise we're subjected to our no eating meat and no drinking wine during this coming week. And I really hope that we don't even need to celebrate Tisha B'Av, because who knows, there's still time for redemption in the few days ahead. So let's look forward to that. I want to tell you about the setting for tonight's halachic story and dilemma. Most of our stories take place in Israel. The setting is a little bit different than in West Boca. I'm not talking just about Century Village. What I will describe to you, I'm sure we have all seen, but it's not part of our daily life here in Century Village, or even in the areas that we go to within a couple of miles from here in East Boca. We can see it in other areas. We find it as well, but not usual on a day-to-day basis here. And that is having an apartment building that has retail space on the ground floor and the residents living from floor 2 and above. And it happened to be that in this one building that was set up like that, one of the retailers was a children's accessory store. Strollers, high chairs, beach toys, other toys, children's bathtubs, infant bathtubs, some special gifts, etc. And the store owner's practice was, for a few hours a day, he would extend his store. He would bring out some of his merchandise and stack it up, display it in front of the store, on the sidewalk in front of the store. Several neighbors in that building were disturbed by that. They felt that the merchandise compromised the space available to them on the sidewalk, and that the store owner really shouldn't be doing it. And they actually summoned him to Beis Din. They lodged a complaint. And the members of the Beis Din came down to inspect the store and the sidewalk to understand exactly what this phenomenon was all about and how much it interfered with the sidewalk. And when they came in and inspected, they made the decision that the sidewalk was wide enough to accommodate the merchandise that was placed in front of the store and still leave adequate, more than adequate space for the pedestrians that were coming by. And obviously there were no other ordinances that had to be worried about, or else they would have been taken into account in the decision of the Beis Din as well. So the people who filed the complaint all but one were satisfied. They had a complaint, the Beis Din didn't agree with them, and they accepted the Beis Din. That's the way it works. You can go into Beis Din, and people are opposing one another, but once the halacha is determined and the psak is given, the mitzvah is to look at everybody as a tzaddik, because they're complying with the ruling. And that was good for everybody except one. We'll call him Shmuel. He was upset. He didn't agree with the judges on the Beis Din. He didn't agree with the retailer. He didn't agree with his neighbors who were willing to accept the psak din. He was upset, and he let people know that he was upset. He let his neighbors know. He let the store owner know, and he talked not nicely about the members of the Beis Din as well. Part one. Part two, amazingly, happened the very next day. This fellow Shmuel and his wife, Tzipora, have a nice family. Their youngest child is 2 years old. In the late morning, Tzipora, the mom, feels like it's awfully quiet on their mirpeset, on the balcony in their third floor apartment, that it's very quiet. And their 2-year-old had been playing out there, so she figured that he must have fallen asleep. And she went out to check on him because he was playing with toys, and he didn't have a blanket or anything even to sleep on, so she was concerned. That she went out to the mirpeset, and he's not there. Now, I have to warn, I know some of us may have cardiac conditions. It'll be a good ending to the story, but it was very, very tense, because both parents who were home, the other kids weren't home, the two parents started running through their apartment looking for the child, looking in closets, looking under the bed, calling out the child's name, and there's no sign of the child. And then all of a sudden, the father, Shmuel, remembers that there was a table and a chair out on the mirpeset, having a cup of coffee, a drink, whatever it was, and he says, "No, that can't be, it can't be." And he runs onto the mirpeset, and he looks over, and his child is on the sidewalk, more or less. And his heart, is with great pain. The mother starts running down right away. And the father sees that the child looks like he's okay. It turned out that the child fell, and one of the regular features of the store owner is that he always put out the baby baths, and they were stacked up. And this child indeed climbed up on the chair, onto the table, leaned over the balcony and fell, and he fell onto the stack of plastic bathtubs. He smashed the first one, cracked the second one, and then was caught in the third one. It was in this pile, which did collapse onto the floor. The child had only a couple of scratches on him, no broken bones, and he was fine. This father, after hugging his son, ran into the store and hugged the store owner. And he said, "I'm sorry for everything I said about you, and I thank you for having your bathtubs out there, because you saved my child's life." And then he went over to the office of the Beis Din, and he apologized to the Beis Din for saying unkind words about their psak din, and asked for mechila, a very appropriate thought actually. Now during the 9 days, we're supposed to be thinking about our actions and how we can improve ourselves. And he asked the members of the Beis Din to forgive him for his reaction, which they did. And then he asked them a shaila, a question. Is he as the father of the baby who smashed and destroyed two of the bathtubs, is he responsible to make financial restitution to the store owner? It's an interesting question. I want to share with you two sources. Both come from the Mishnayos in Bava Kama. The first Mishnah I share is actually later in the order of Mishnayos, but in the fourth Mishnah of the eighth parak of HaChovel, the beginning of that Mishnah says that there are some people that because they have limited mental abilities, you don't really want to be in a situation where damage is caused, because the functioning adult of regular mental capabilities will always be guilty if he causes injury to, let's say, a minor or someone who has a low IQ or has some type of other mental impairment. Those are examples of people that if I were to cause injury to them or to their property, I'd have to make restitution. But if they damage me or my property because they don't have the full mental capability, I mean, the child who's young and considered a katan at pre-bar bat mitzvah age, so God willing, eventually he or she is going to mature into a better mental state. And the others, unfortunately, may remain where they are. And so anyone who's in that compromised mental state is not going to be held responsible for damages that he or she causes. There is another Mishnah, though, that talks about a cow. In the times of the Mishnah, there were a lot of terraced living areas. So you could have either a street, and below the level of the street, you could have somebody's garden, or sometimes you could have terraced homes so that the roof of the lower level was a garden, and then you had a home above it. And the Mishnah deals with a case where it rained and something was slippery and somebody's cow slipped off of his property and fell onto the property of the downstairs neighbor. And he had a lot of vegetables in his garden, let's say. And the vegetables wound up saving the cow from any significant damage, but obviously the vegetables were destroyed, at least in terms of marketing them to the regular customers. So there, the halacha is that the owner of the cow who benefited from those smashed vegetables has to make restitution according to a particular formula, because he benefited from something that saved the value, preserved the value of his cow. So these two Mishnayos, in a way, at first glance, are a little bit contradictory, because the owner of the cow has to make restitution to the downstairs neighbor, but the first Mishnah that I said, that if you damage a minor, you have to pay, but if the minor damages you, the minor does not have to pay, though they might be looked as contradictory until we make the obvious distinction that a cow is property. And if I have a cow, I own the cow. But even though I have responsibility to feed my child, clothe my child, educate my child, but the child is not my property. The child is not the property of the parent. And so it turns out that technically speaking, the father, the parents, were not obligated to make restitution for the damaged bathtubs that saved the child's life, certainly from serious injury, but maybe even his life. They were not obligated to make that payment. There is discussion in halachas whether or not the child, when he or she gets older, is obligated or not. But the core halacha is that there's no obligation there. Of course, I don't think we'd be surprised if the parents voluntarily made payment, because obviously they were ecstatic. But that was the case, and that was the ruling the Rebbe Silverstein said, that technically speaking, they need not pay for this wonderful damage that actually occurred and wound up saving their son. And as we reflect on that story, this is a true story, and it happened so close in time to the complaint that was filed. It's like amazing, but it reminds us that we don't always get what we're looking at. The father looked at that pile of bathtubs initially as being an eyesore, blocking the path on the sidewalk, whether that was a real claim or not. And then a day later, he used it as the best thing ever in the world because it protected his child. But let's keep that in mind for us. Any obstacles that we encounter, let's not look at them as obstacles, but as opportunities that actually might bring great bracha to us and to others. I want to wish everybody a Shavua Tov. I have unmuted all that I can unmute. The rest of you who wish may unmute yourselves. I want to remind you that the program next week will be curtailed. We will have Havdalah, maybe a song on Havdalah, and then leave time to get ready on to Label Ben Moshe's post-Shabbos Nachamu concert. We'll be looking forward a week after that to Rabbi Green taking over as host of the Havdalah program. So all of you who want to be unmuted are unmuted. And I wish you a good Shavua Tov.
That story reminds me of my father's store. Ann Clark knew my father, right? Remember? And he had a women's clothing store, and he would have a sidewalk sale a few times a year, and he had apartments upstairs. But thank God we never had. Oh, we didn't have bathtubs in the clothing stores. Again, Rabbi King.
Shavua Tov.
Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone.
Rabbi Chen.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Rita and Mark, Shavua Tov, Ann and Dave.
And Rabbi Shavua Tov.
Yes, you look good.
Be Levy,
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Arlene, Shavua Tov, Florence, Rebecca.
Rabbi Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Norman and Rachel, Shavua Tov, Moshe and Karen. Shula and Rabbi Chen, Shavua Tov, Helen and your family, Shavua Tov.
Thank you.
Shavua Tov, Rabbi.
Hope everyone's well and a good week. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Beautiful
Well,
way.
good.
Meaningful week.
Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone.
One day, this week will herald into the happiest of celebrations.
Okay. Shavua Tov, Rabbi.
Shavua Tov to you, Rebecca.
And to Mrs. Yasgur also. Shavua Tov, everyone.
Okay, everybody. Take care.
Okay.
Good week. Thank you so much. Thank you, Barbara, for your words yesterday.
Thanks
Going
for
out, coming in.
Rita.
Send our regards
Shavua
to
Everybody, and the singing, it was beautiful yesterday, beautiful and tonight. Thank you, Rabbi Kane.
Okay.
Bye, Rabbi. A good week and safe one.
Good week, everyone.
And best to our building friends, to Yarmouth DA.
Shavua Tov. Beautiful weather day here today, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
Especially for you out of
Except for the little
north, you should
rainy
know.
part.
Short rain and otherwise beautiful, not too hot.
Yeah.
Good.
Nice breeze.
Wonderful.
Very nice.
Hot New York.
What,
Okay.
oh, and Miriam also is on. Miriam, so
Yeah, New York had the heat. Okay. Sitting in the heat.